Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? The Eagles signed another player from the Saints practice squad, joining second-year wide receiver Shaq Davis. A defensive tackle, PJ Mustipher, was not retained with the Saints, signed most of their practice squad to the future reserve contract, so he's now going to Philly. But really what I wanted to talk about was the Shaq Davis component of this, because we spoke about Odell on Thursday. And the reason we talked a little bit about Odell was Bill Barnwell at ESPN has a piece up with the best remaining free agents in the best landing spot, and he listed the Saints as the best landing spot for Odell Beckham. And I gave all the reasons why I thought that may not be the best idea. I think the sentimentality of it makes sense. I think the fact that you wouldn't be asking Odell to come in as a number one. I mean, you would legitimately be looking at him as at best a number three behind Olave and Rashid Shaheed. So with that in mind, just look at the production you got from your number three receiver a year ago, which was Michael Thomas, who gave you 39 catches for 448 and a score. Like, that would be respectable from a number three. Now, Thomas missed a bunch of the season. But anyway, the reason I want to talk about, because Shaq Davis is a guy who last year in the preseason turned a lot of heads. Remember, he was the guy from South Carolina State, the big 6'5", 215-pound receiver who really made a strong impression in the preseason, was cut and then spent the season on the practice squad. But as you start to look at the Saints receiver room, it becomes it is becoming more and more apparent that receiver isn't a want or a need. Receiver is a must for New Orleans. And they got a lot of these right now. I mean, this is a team that we all know has their issues and struggles, and they got a lot of issues. The offensive line's an issue. You got to get more productive at running the football. If that means better line makes your backs more productive, or you need more backs, I don't know. You got to get younger on defense. There's a lot of things, right? We all know. But just look at the numbers, right? In a given year, when you come out of fall camp or out of training camp, you're going to keep 5 or 6 receivers. You'll keep a 6th receiver if that receiver is someone that's going to help you on special teams. Like, you see that with a guy like J.T. Gray. Yes, J.T. Gray is a safety, but J.T. Gray is will make the team every year because he's an all-pro special teamer. So if you need help at safety, there's an injury, you need someone in a bind, he'll go play there. But really, his role on the team is he's going to be on every single special teams unit. So yes, you're keeping an extra safety because he's listed as a safety, but he really made the team as a special teamer. Courtney Roby is probably the best example of that in recent Saints history. Courtney Roby was a receiver, but he played on every special teams unit. He returned kicks and returned punts. He was your gunner. So you kept a 6th receiver, but really it was just an extra special teamer. So just follow that along with me, right? Assume you're going to keep 5 receivers on this team. Well, like Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed are obvious, right? Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, they're done. They're making the team. We all know that. When you look at receivers that caught a pass for you a year ago, I'm not talking about pass catchers. I'm not talking about Alvin Kamara or Juwan Johnson or Foster Moreau. I'm not talking about guys or Taysom Hill. I'm not talking about guys that caught a pass. I'm talking about wide receivers. Like, that is your listed position as wide receiver. You had 6 that caught a pass for you a year ago. Olave, Shaheed, Michael Thomas, A.T. Perry, Lynn Bowden, and Keith Kirkwood. That's it. That's the list. Those are the 6 that caught a pass for you a year ago. Olave, Shaheed, A.T. Perry are all back. Michael Thomas, we know, has been cut. Lynn Bowden and Keith Kirkwood are both free agents. So half of the list are not with you. Now, you could go sign Lynn Bowden again. You could bring Keith Kirkwood back again or not. And you already added Cedric Wilson and Stanley Morgan in free agency. So if you think about it, under contract, you've got Olave, Shaheed, A.T. Perry, Cedric Wilson, Stanley Morgan. You've got 5 under contract. You are absolutely going to camp with more than 5 wide receivers. Like, you're going to double that number. for training camp. So, and maybe Lynn Bowden and Keith Kirk will be part of that. But really what I'm looking for here is who's going to be my number 3? Like, I am confident in Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. You all should be. We all should be. Olave has been one of the great young wide receivers. He had 1,100 yards a season ago. Shaheed, 46 catches for 719 and 5 scores. Like, those two you should be very excited about. Young, talented receivers. Are you convinced A.T. Perry makes the team? I hope he does. Talked about him when he signed. When they drafted him, I was pumped about it. He was a massively productive guy at Wake Forest who had the knock on him with some drops, and there was some off-the-field stuff that maybe caused him to drop, but it felt like a steal where you got A.T. Perry in round 6. Like, are you convinced Cedric Wilson's making this team? I mean, I would have been convinced a year ago that Jalen Smith was making the team. When the Saints signed Jalen Smith, the linebacker, the former Cowboys linebacker, who Notre Dame, we all know his story, would have been a top 10 pick, had the devastating injury in the Fiesta Bowl, went and started round 2, basically sat out his entire rookie year, was a good player with the Cowboys. Like, I would have been convinced Jalen Smith was making the team. Didn't. So we can assume Cedric Wilson makes the team. I don't think that's any guarantee. And Stanley Morgan feels like one of the camp bodies. Another Lynn Bowden, Keith Kirkwood, a guy who maybe could make the team, could be active for you, but I think that's a long shot. It feels like a long shot anyway. So just from a numbers standpoint, like, you are going to add Olave, Shaheed, Perry, Wilson, Morgan. That's 5. You're probably going to go to camp with 5 more receivers. And maybe some of them are undrafted free agents that you sign to bring in as for a workout. Or you go into free agency and add another veteran in free agency. Or maybe you use one of your top draft picks on a receiver. Now, the big question is, would you take a receiver at 14? And I would say my asterisk would be, now Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, we don't assume are going to be there. Rome Odunze is the next guy on everybody's board. If one of those 3 guys is there at 14, then I could accept that because of the value. In the same way that if Brock Bowers is there at 14, you take him. Yes, you have Juwan Johnson, you have Foster Moreau, but it's this generational talent at that position, and he's available for you at 14 when everyone has a top 10 grade on him. Yes, you take him. It's the same concept of when they took Ryan Ramczyk. The Saints didn't need an offensive tackle. Teron Armstead was your left tackle. Zach Strief was your right tackle. You were solidified there. You had the pick at 32. That was the pick you got when you traded Brandon Cooks to the Patriots. And they took Ramczyk. Well, they took Ramczyk because they thought he was the best left tackle in the draft, and he was sitting there at 32. They're like, of course we're taking this guy. And he became a cornerstone of your offensive line since 2017. Now, we all know the story, injuries and whatnot may shorten his career. We'll see. But the point is, sometimes there's so much value, you absolutely take the player if there's value. And that's what I would say with receiver at 14. But what I'm coming around to more and more is not receiver at 14, because I think you have to go offensive tackle because you have such a gigantic need on the offensive line. I've told you before, Olu Fashanu is my dream scenario, the offensive tackle out of Penn State. Like, you can get your franchise left tackle at 14 potentially. If he's there, take him. But even if it's not Fashanu, you're going to have great value on the offensive line at 14. But your second-round pick, because this is such a deep receiver draft, somebody is going to be there for you that you can take. And yes, it means you're going to have another young receiver in the room, and you've already got 2 good young receivers, but you got to have another person in that room you can count on that's going to replace Michael Thomas's production. And do you really want to go the veteran free agent route? Do you want to go Odell? Do you want to go Hunter Renfrow? Yeah, I would have told you I'd have been excited about Shaq Davis, but he's obviously now been signed by the Eagles. I'm more coming around on the idea of get me another young rookie receiver because, and this is the primary reason, the New Orleans Saints are continuing to put Band-Aids on this roster, and they're old. Cedric Wilson is old in NFL terms, right? You're talking about all these guys that you've signed to 1-year deals. I mean, I love Tyrann Mathieu. He's old. You could talk about Willie Gay and Chase Young, who are younger players signed to one-year deals, but your defense is an old defense. Your offense, Michael Thomas is now gone. Alvin Kamara's pushing 30. Ryan Ramczyk is injured, and we don't know how much longer he'll be able to play. James Hurst took a pay cut to stay on this team. Andres Pete's gone. Like, you're old. The only way you're going to fix that is an infusion of young players through the draft. You got to get younger and then let them grow up like you did in 2017. Now, the difference is you had great leadership then. You had Drew Brees, you had Cameron Jordan, you had these great veteran players, and you don't necessarily have that right now. But, you know, if you use all of your draft picks this year, and I'm not stupid. I know the Saints aren't going to make 4 fifth-round picks. They're going to package that and they're going to move up. But could 6 or 7 draft picks make this team this year? Yes. And it's the route they're going to have to go to fix their cap issues and their age issues. It means you're probably going to lose with a young team. You're going to lose with a young team, but it's going to help you get better in the long term and fix the issues with your roster. So, yeah, I'm all about getting younger with a younger receiver with the second-round pick. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.